The sun filtered through the curtains as Veronica packed her belongings, her heart heavy with both excitement and trepidation. She was leaving the familiar countryside for the city, a place of endless opportunities and, she hoped, the promise of a better life. Her teaching job at St. Raphael's primary school had been fulfilling, but she needed more than the quiet, predictable rhythm of the village. Little did she know, the decision to move would bring challenges she had never imagined. As she boarded the bus to Lagos, memories of the children she taught flashed through her mind. Their innocent faces made her question her decision, but she reminded herself why she was doing this. A chance to escape the judgment and stagnation of her small community. Veronica had lived through heartbreak and betrayal, and the city offered the potential to redefine her life on her own terms. Yet, in the depths of her heart, she wondered if she was simply running away. Lagos was overwhelming. The cacophony of voices, the honking of cars, and the smell of fried plantains on the street corners engulfed her senses. Veronica stepped off the bus and clutched her suitcase tightly, her eyes scanning the unfamiliar terrain. She was greeted by her cousin Chioma, a vibrant and confident woman who had made Lagos her home for years. Chioma's enthusiasm was contagious, and for the first time, Veronica felt a spark of hope. "You'll love it here," Chioma said, dragging Veronica into a taxi. "The city might seem intimidating, but it has a way of surprising you." Her cousin's words lingered in Veronica's mind as they arrived at Chioma's modest apartment. As they unpacked and settled in, Chioma warned her about the city's complexities. "Stay sharp, Vero. Lagos is not for the faint-hearted, but it's also where dreams come alive." Veronica nodded, unsure if her dreams were ready to take flight or destined to crash before they began. The first week in Lagos was a whirlwind of adjustments for Veronica. Chioma, true to her word, introduced her to the bustling local markets and vibrant city life. Veronica's reserved nature clashed with Lagos' unrelenting energy. Chioma's friends were curious about the new village girl, teasing her about her small-town habits and quiet demeanor. "You'll have to toughen up if you want to survive here," Chioma said one evening as they prepared dinner. Veronica smiled faintly but remained determined to find her footing. She had managed to secure a temporary teaching position at a private school. While it didn't pay much, it was a step forward. The nights were the hardest. Lagos's perpetual noise seeped through the walls of Chioma's apartment, reminding Veronica of how far she was from home. Yet, she took solace in the city lights that sparkled like stars on the horizon, a beacon of hope that her sacrifices would not be in vain. On a rainy Wednesday afternoon, Veronica found herself dashing through the streets to catch a bus after work. As she slipped on the wet pavement, a firm hand grabbed her arm, steadying her. She looked up to find a tall, sharply dressed man with an umbrella. "Careful," he said, his voice deep but kind. "These streets are unforgiving." Veronica mumbled a thank you, embarrassed by the incident. The man smiled and handed her his umbrella. "Take it. You need it more than I do." Before she could protest, he disappeared into the crowd. Chioma laughed when Veronica recounted the story that evening. "That's Lagos for you. Sometimes, strangers are kinder than family." "Did he leave his number?" Veronica rolled her eyes. "No, Chioma. Not everyone is looking for romance." But the encounter lingered in her mind. The stranger's face and voice became an uninvited guest in her thoughts, making her wonder if their paths would cross again. Weeks turned into months, and Veronica began to adapt to her new life. Her students were lively and curious, and she found joy in teaching them. Yet, the city's pace often left her drained. One evening, as she prepared to leave the school, she heard a familiar voice. "Veronica?" She turned to see Jonathan, her first love from the village. He looked different, older, more refined, but his eyes still held the same warmth. Memories of their youthful days together came flooding back, bittersweet and uninvited. "Jonathan," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "What are you doing here?" "I work nearby," he replied. "I never expected to see you here. How have you been?" They spent the next hour catching up. Jonathan spoke of his travels and career, while Veronica shared her journey to Lagos. As they parted ways, he handed her his business card. "If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to call." Veronica walked home with mixed emotions. Seeing Jonathan reminded her of the pain of their parting and the vulnerability of her heart. She tucked the card into her bag, unsure if she'd ever use it. A week later, Veronica received an unexpected invitation to a charity gala hosted by the school's board. It was an opportunity to network, but she hesitated. She felt out of place in such high-profile gatherings. Chioma wouldn't hear of it. "You're going," she insisted, pulling out one of her dresses for Veronica to wear. "You need to step out of your comfort zone." Reluctantly, Veronica agreed. The gala was held at an upscale hotel, and the grandeur left her speechless. As she mingled awkwardly, she felt a tap on her shoulder. Turning, she froze. It was the stranger who had given her his umbrella weeks ago. "We meet again," he said with a smile. "I'm Marcos." Veronica's heart raced as they began to talk. Marcos was a civil engineer and a philanthropist. His charisma was undeniable, and for the first time in a long while, Veronica felt a connection. By the end of the evening, Marcos offered to drive her home. She hesitated but eventually agreed, her instincts telling her this was the start of something significant. As weeks passed, Marcos and Veronica grew closer. They often met for coffee or lunch, sharing stories about their lives and ambitions. Marcos was unlike anyone Veronica had met before. He was attentive and genuine, qualities she hadn't realized she longed for. One afternoon, as they sat in a cozy cafe overlooking the city, Marcos asked, "What brought you to Lagos, really?" Veronica hesitated. "I wanted a fresh start. The village had too many memories, too much judgment." Marcos nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes, we need to leave the familiar to find ourselves. But don't let the city change your essence. You have a quiet strength about you that's rare." His words warmed her heart, but they also scared her. Was she ready to let someone in after all the pain she'd endured? Chioma, ever the cheerleader, noticed Veronica's hesitation and encouraged her to take the leap. "He's a good man, Vero. Don't overthink it." But Veronica couldn't shake the fear that this connection, like the others before, would end in heartbreak. She resolved to proceed cautiously, even as her feelings for Marcos deepened. Veronica's budding relationship with Marcos brought both joy and apprehension. Their bond deepened with every shared story, but she couldn't shake the lingering shadows of her past. The village's judgmental whispers still echoed in her mind, and memories of Jonathan resurfaced unexpectedly. One evening, as she sat alone in Chioma's apartment, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Jonathan. "Can we meet? There's something I'd like to talk about." Veronica hesitated before replying. Despite her unresolved feelings, she agreed to meet him the following day. At a quiet cafe, Jonathan's demeanor was unusually serious. "Veronica, I've been thinking a lot about us," he began. "Leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life. I'd like a second chance." His words stunned her. She felt a flicker of the old connection but knew she wasn't the same woman he had left behind. "Jonathan," she said carefully, "I've moved on. You should too." Walking away from the meeting, Veronica felt a surprising sense of closure. Yet, as she returned home, she wondered if Marcos would understand the complexities of her past. Marcos noticed Veronica's hesitation and mood shifts but chose not to push her for answers. Instead, he focused on creating moments of joy. One weekend, he surprised her with a trip to a serene beach outside the city. The sound of waves and the cool breeze brought a rare sense of peace to her. "What's on your mind?" Marcos asked as they walked along the shore. "Life," Veronica replied. "How it twists and turns, bringing people into and out of our lives." Marcos stopped and faced her. "You know, whatever is on your mind, you can share it with me. I'm here for you." Veronica smiled but remained silent. She wanted to tell him about Jonathan, about her fears, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she reached for his hand, letting the moment speak for itself. That evening, as they sat by a bonfire, Marcos shared stories of his childhood. Veronica found herself laughing and letting her guard down, even if just a little. For the first time in years, she felt like she belonged. Just as Veronica began to find her footing in her relationship with Marcos, an unexpected visitor arrived at Chioma's apartment, Jonathan. He appeared unannounced, claiming he couldn't let go of their past. Chioma was the first to confront him. "You had your chance, Jonathan. Why can't you let her be? Veronica stepped out to face him. Jonathan, we've had this conversation. I've moved on. With that man? Jonathan retorted. Do you even know who he really is? The accusation stung, but Veronica stood her ground. Marcos is a good man, and he's shown me more kindness than you ever did. Jonathan's expression softened. I just don't want you to get hurt again. As he left, Veronica felt a mix of anger and sadness. She knew she needed to tell Marcos about Jonathan's visit, but she also feared it might complicate their growing relationship. That evening, as Marcos called to check on her, she decided honesty was the only way forward. Tomorrow she would tell him everything. The next day, Veronica met Marcos at their usual cafe. Her heart raced as she recounted Jonathan's visit and his warnings. Marcos listened quietly, his expression unreadable. Thank you for telling me, he said finally. I appreciate your honesty. But I'll tell you this, my past isn't spotless either. If Jonathan wants to dig up dirt, he might find something. The question is, will it matter to you? Veronica looked into his eyes and saw vulnerability she hadn't noticed before. What matters is who you are now, she said softly. Their conversation deepened their bond. Marcos's openness reassured Veronica, and for the first time, she felt confident in their relationship. But she couldn't shake the feeling that Jonathan wasn't done interfering. Life returned to normal for a while, but a sense of unease lingered. Marcos became busier with work, often traveling for days at a time. Veronica supported him but missed their time together. During one of his absences, she received an anonymous envelope containing photos of Marcos with another woman. Her hands trembled as she examined the images. They seemed innocent enough, business meetings and casual outings, but the implication was clear. Veronica's mind raced. Was this Jonathan's doing? Or was there truth to the suggestion of infidelity? When Marcos returned, Veronica confronted him. Do you have something to tell me? She asked, holding up the photos. Marcos's face darkened. Where did you get these? Does it matter? Just tell me if there's something I should know. Marcos sighed. I have nothing to hide. The woman in these photos is a business associate. We've worked together on several projects. If I had something to hide, I'd have told you. Veronica wanted to believe him, but doubt gnawed at her. The shadow of Jonathan's warning loomed large, threatening to unravel the trust they had built. Determined to uncover the truth, Veronica decided to investigate on her own. She reached out to one of her students' parents, a private investigator, and shared the photos. The investigator agreed to look into the matter discreetly. Meanwhile, Jonathan reappeared, claiming he had proof of Marcos's dishonesty. Veronica refused to entertain him but couldn't ignore the seeds of doubt he had sown. The investigator's findings came back a week later. The woman in the photos was indeed a business associate, but there was no evidence of impropriety. Relieved yet guilty for doubting Marcos, Veronica resolved to share everything with him. I shouldn't have doubted you, she admitted one evening. I let Jonathan's words get to me. Marcos took her hands in his. I understand. Trust takes time. But if we're going to make this work, we can't let others come between us. The ordeal strengthened their relationship. Marcos became more open about his work, inviting Veronica to events and introducing her to his colleagues. Veronica, in turn, found ways to support him while pursuing her own goals. She began volunteering at a local women's shelter, inspired by her journey of resilience. Jonathan's interference dwindled, but Veronica couldn't help but wonder if he had truly given up. Chioma warned her to stay vigilant, reminding her that some people thrived on causing chaos. One evening, as Veronica and Marcos shared dinner, he surprised her with a question. Would you consider moving in with me? Veronica's heart skipped a beat. The idea thrilled and terrified her. She asked for time to think, knowing this decision would mark a significant step in their relationship. After days of reflection, Veronica decided to take the leap. She moved into Marcos's apartment, bringing with her a sense of hope and apprehension. The transition wasn't without challenges. Their different habits and routines sometimes clashed, but they learned to navigate them together. One afternoon, as they unpacked boxes, Veronica found an old journal of Marcos's. Hesitant but curious, she skimmed through its pages. It detailed his struggles and triumphs, revealing a depth she hadn't fully understood. Marcos caught her reading and smiled. "That was a tough time in my life," he admitted. "But it made me who I am today." Veronica nodded. "I'm glad you shared it with me. It helps me understand you better." As they embraced, Veronica felt a renewed sense of trust. They had both faced their pasts and emerged stronger. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe in the possibility of a future filled with love and stability. The months that followed were a testament to their commitment. Veronica and Marcos began to build a life together, balancing work, personal growth, and shared dreams. Veronica's involvement at the women's shelter expanded into a leadership role, where her empathy and resilience inspired many. Marcos's business ventures flourished, but he always prioritized time with Veronica. Together, they planned a small getaway to celebrate their milestones. The serene countryside reminded Veronica of her roots, blending her past and present into a harmonious reality. One evening during their trip, Marcos proposed. On a moonlit patio overlooking rolling hills, he knelt and offered a ring. "Veronica, you've made my life richer in ways I can't describe. Will you marry me?" Tears streaming, Veronica whispered, "Yes." The promise of a shared future illuminated their path. As they planned their wedding, Jonathan reappeared, pleading for one final meeting. Against her better judgment, Veronica agreed, hoping to lay the past to rest. Jonathan, however, revealed one last twist. He claimed to have evidence that Marcos's business dealings weren't as noble as they seemed. Veronica confronted Marcos that evening. "Jonathan's saying things again. I don't want to doubt you, but I need to know the truth." Marcos took her hand. "Let me show you everything." He opened his books, laid bare his business practices, and invited her to scrutinize every detail. Veronica's fears dissolved as she saw the integrity in his work. Jonathan's hold over her was finally broken. With Marcos's unwavering support, Veronica chose to cut all ties with her former lover, fully embracing her future. Their wedding day was a celebration of love, resilience, and new beginnings. Friends and family gathered, including Chioma, who beamed with pride at her cousin's journey. Veronica walked down the aisle, her heart swelling with gratitude and hope. As they exchanged vows, Marcos promised, "To be your partner in all things, to face challenges with you, and to cherish every moment we share." Veronica's reply was simple yet profound. "You are my home, my strength, and my greatest adventure." The cheers of their loved ones marked the beginning of a beautiful chapter. Married life brought its own challenges, but Veronica and Marcos faced them with unity. Veronica's shelter expanded into a regional organization, offering hope to countless women. Marcos's ventures thrived, but his greatest joy came from supporting Veronica's dreams. The couple's home became a sanctuary of love and laughter. They hosted dinners for friends, mentored younger couples, and always found time to nurture their bond. Their shared vision for the future grew stronger with every passing day. Years later, Veronica and Marcos stood hand in hand, reflecting on their journey. Their love had weathered storms and flourished in sunshine, leaving a legacy of resilience and compassion. Together, they raised a family, instilling values of courage and kindness in their children. Their story became a beacon for others, proof that love can triumph over doubt and fear. As they celebrated their anniversary surrounded by loved ones, Veronica whispered to Marcos, "This is the life I dreamed of, and it's all because we never gave up on each other." Marcos smiled, his eyes full of love. "Here's to many more chapters, my love." Life's journey is unpredictable, but resilience and love can light the way. Share this story with someone who inspires you to face challenges with courage. Let them know that together, you can overcome anything.